Hey crew, Mark Hadmaker here. Let's talk a little bit about we're going to make up a word. We're going to call it intermuscular hack. This is much ado from our unleaded conditioning program, particularly the whole hog program. We're taking lots of the old school material and trying to bring it forward and use it now, because a lot of it is looks like what we're doing now, but a lot of it really isn't, because there's lots of teeny tiny little tweaks. And this is just one example. This is a self-test that you can do to give it a shot. I'm going to use parallettes to make this happen, but you can do this off of a floor wall sit. If you got just two chair backs, this will work. Don't worry if you can't do a standard L sit. You know, you're putting your legs out. Just grab dip bars or the backs of two chairs. Just bring your knees up to your chest and hold them this way. And what we're going to be talking about, this intermuscular hack, usually what happens whenever people want to raise their legs straight out, make sure we're clear on the position we're talking about. I just putting our legs out in this position as such. People will turn this on and they'll be using all the hip flexor musculature and really using the psoas muscles, getting the attachments up here in the back, twine through the pelvis, come forward to the front of the hips. And what happens on this is it starts creating over time this little bit of shearing force on the vertebra. That's why doing Roman chair sit-ups, just doing standard sit-ups and any crunch that moves past 30 degrees, it's not really working the abs like you think. You're actually working the psoas muscle, and if you're thinking about, oh, I'd like this to be nice and showy, and ain't nothing going to show unless you're going through an autopsy. And it's not working the abs. It's also creating extra pressure on your back, particularly your lumbar spine. Start pulling it more and more into lordosis, screwing up that posture, and get some lower back pain. But when you're doing these L sits and stuff, when we see this, it doesn't mean these are off the table, but there's a teeny tiny little hack to make sure you're changing the emphasis. The psoas doesn't completely go out of it, but it does change the emphasis and how it works. So for the test, I'd like to grab, whether you got parallettes, dip bars, get between two benches, two chairs. If you can only bring your knees up to your chest, this is fine. It's all going to work. But what I want you to do is be able to pull yourself up, lift your legs either straight out. That's not within the capabilities yet. Bring your knees up and hold it for 10 seconds. And this is going to be the self-test, because it's going to be something that you will be able to perceive. Once you hold it out, I'm only going to do like 5 seconds here. You're going to stick them out and just hold it. And you're going to think about that, hold it completely straight. Think about it. See how that feels. See where you're registering what's going on. Now, the intermuscular hack is this. Our pelvis actually has a bit of a bend in it. It's not a solid piece here. It's two halves. So pelvis is here, and actually this connecting point is called the pubic symphysis. Okay, it doesn't have a whole lot of bend in it, but it kind of has this rotating aspect to it here. More so, a bit more so in women, particularly because of it has to be to accommodate that pelvic girdle whenever you're bearing children. So the pelvis, two halves, comes together, joins with the pelvic symphysis. It's not super bendy, but there is a little bit. So what we want to think about is we want to use all the little intermuscular areas around in here, not just holding our legs straight out. We want to think about these 2 points of the pelvis. So this being the front of the pelvis, this being the rear. We want to think about this. That's not, your pelvis is not going to do that, but we're thinking about that. So by the sheer dint of you thinking about this happen, and often what will help if your feet are straight out in front of you this way, we'll do it here in just a moment. Instead of, if we're pointing our toes out, a lot of times people will either point their toes out and their legs will fall out to the side a little bit, a lot more pressure on that psoas, or they're going to go straight out. You have this nice, gorgeous, clean line. Again, psoas, but you're going to think about pointing that pelvis in, so that means the toes will slightly go this direction. If my feet were flat up here instead of being here, 10 to 12 degrees, straight up, I'm thinking pigeon-toed. It's not going to really read that, because really it's not so much you rotating those the femur and the acetabulum as you think about that pubic symphysis moving. So if I put this straight on, instead of just being feet out, feet up, it's a little bit in, but really it's less about what the toes are doing and more about what the pubic symphysis is doing. Now the test is, I want you to do the first test with your legs just straight out or pulling your knees up. Perceive how that feels, take a few breaths, and go back and think about that bend in. Now, if you're anything like me and anyone else we put the test through, and if you find that feeling on it, you're going to realize, hey, that's a way easier way to go about. By way, we're going to say not 20% easier, because it's still a tough thing to do. But it lets you know you're turning on the right muscular area, reducing the pressure in that lower back. And we're going to take an exercise that was usually putting more shear forces on it, improving the quality of it, improving the amount of time you can get the static hold out of it. And when we start putting it into movement, we're going to be able to think about bending that pubic symphysis and getting a more internal rotation out of it, well, towards a rotation towards the midline. And also this starts popping up when you see some of these earlier forms of kicking as well. It's a really small, subtle thing where you're thinking about not just getting this whip, not just getting the whip, you're thinking about that pelvis going to the midline. All these things have ramifications that move down the line. So in the unleaded conditioning, we're trying to improve the perceived difficulty of an exercise without necessarily making the weight jump by big amounts. And then we're also trying to improve the ability of our combat by trying to take these same intramuscular positions and then applying them into the combat game. Anyway, give the exercise a shot if you like it. There's a lot more little things like that, little teeny tiny hacks that just send my soul and make my world. If you're interested in what's going on here, have a look at that unleaded conditioning program, the Whole Hog, or for the combat stuff, just go over to our extremeselfprotection.com. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pieces of material over there to wade through. Anyway, hope you got something out of this. Thanks for putting your eyes on this. Here comes my phone.